I think the solution to the ferry questions in both Digby and Yarmouth, where we have challenges, where we know now that Yarmouth doesn't have a ferry and unlikely to have one for some time at the very least, and that Digby's at risk. The federal government put $28 million for all of the ferry services other than Marine Atlantic in Atlantic Canada and Quebec, and that money's out. All of $25 million was spent in the first year, and there's only 1 year left. So there are risks at Digby. So if you want to look at the solution, perhaps one way to start would be to look at the past. How does this situation evolve? These ferries were private sector operated ferries quite some time ago. And the federal government at the time saw them as a necessary infrastructure link across the Bay of Fundy to New Brunswick, to our markets in central Canada, the United States, New England in particular, and took over operation of those ferries under Marine Atlantic. The Blue Nose Run was established rather than the Boston Run that had been there in the past, and that was run under Sea and Marine at that time. And the other in Digby, I believe it was CP. And those were taken over by Sea and Marine and later by Marine Atlantic and run quite successfully. When we got to deficit restrictions or deficit cutting in the mid-1990s, the private sector solution was tried and seems to be working relatively well, or at least had in the short term, and works on some runs. But it's no longer working in Yarmouth and is at risk of failure in Digby. So I think the federal government has to step in again, has to either go into a long-term arrangement with the private sector, with modern ferries that are efficient, that answer the needs of today and tomorrow. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to bring back Marine Atlantic. That's a federal crown corporation, is subsidized already by the federal government, operates the Sydney to Newfoundland ferries, can easily be brought back into this area, find ferries quickly, man them very easily. They still own the infrastructure, still owned by Transport Canada, and I think they could return to giving ferries with the right vessels at the right price, so it has a value to Atlantic Canada for the long term. So that would be the push that I'd be doing. It's the argument that I've made with Mr. Ignatieff, and Michael Ignatieff came down in August, on August 8, and in Yarmouth made the commitment of a federal subsidy, federal support, long-term federal support for the Bay of Fundy services, both Yarmouth and Digby. And I believe that that is where we will find our answer.